Hey, Quants, let's get into the charts today, and then I want to talk a little bit about about some stuff that I've been building recently. Just curious if some people would be interested in that. Normally, I'm working on a few different things, but I try to stay focused on one thing at a time, even if I have a number of things that I want to be working on or have kind of started to work on, just as a stub, so I can come back to it. So, with all that said, let's get into the charts. I guess the layout that I have now is just going to be the way that it stays. So it looks like we got some. We closed just above the 8 EMA there. 821 still green. Price is kind of moving up. We do have trend on the 2-day swing for the GAN swing indicator, looking bullish right now. As you can see, we had high, low, and then once we broke this, that would create an upward trend. And so that actually happened. These tend to be fairly close, but I've mentioned before that the GAN swing indicator can be a little bit more responsive than the 821. And so that's one reason I started playing with it in the first place, is because I was looking at potential ways to get out of trades a little bit sooner. I mentioned that selling is not usually my strong point, or hasn't historically been my strong point. So in an effort to kind of improve that, I've been liking using the GAN swing indicator, and so that's something I've been utilizing for probably a couple of years now. So, and I'm liking the way that it tends to play out. However, I do still like the simplicity of some basic MA indicators with some simple oscillators that work in conjunction with each other. So, looking over at the MACD, we have our moving average on the MACD sloped up, quite strongly sloped up, and potentially closing green here. So this is just looking good, in my opinion, for bullish continuation. I mentioned before that we had the, if I was just kind of inside this channel here, that we're above the 50%. So that, can I make that stick? It's not sticking the way I wanted to. That's okay. Just going to stick it on here just so it's there. So above the 50%, maybe I'll just go ahead and leave that on there for the time being. And then the stochastics aren't really giving any kind of good signals here. The only thing that I see here is that the knife looks like it's kind of pointed up, and so obviously we can get these large spikes on the knife, which tend to be very responsive, and so that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I personally don't use the knife too much for anything other than, hey, it's going with us, so yay, confluence. But with that said, if we get the stochastic turning around here and then moving up, obviously, then we'll just have oscillators on our side, which will look good. But price, trend and price, not macro trend to be clear, but the faster trend being the 821 and also the GAN swing trends are going in the right direction for upside price action. So still looking for that touch of the 800 of the 200s here, and so 1, 2, 3, 4. If we get a break up here, I'd be fairly confident that that's going to be our trend playing out up to the 200s at least. So we'll leave it there for Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other ones that we've been looking at. So gold, just trucking along here. I wonder if we're seeing potential for some divergence here. If price were to cap out here, man, where's this big one coming in? So look at this, 1, 2, 3. So that's quite a bit of divergence that could be playing out there. I don't know how well this is going to stick on here. I got the magnets on, so yeah, we could have some pretty significant price divergence here. But stochastics and the MACD are both looking, the MA here I'm looking at is turned up. So those could continue to go a little bit longer. Of course, if this gets above here, then it's going to be negating the potential for that divergence there. Just taking a look at the stochastic here, it looks like, there's potential for divergence here. Of course, the trend line is not going to line up, but really it doesn't have to, right? So just the same divergence here that we're seeing here, where we have a peak here, we have a peak here with price, and then we have a peak here, and so the oscillators are kind of decreasing as the price is increasing, and so we have the potential for some bearish divergence and a third drive of bearish divergence nonetheless on the daily time frame playing out here. So similar to what I mentioned with silver, you might want to consider where you would want to lock in profits if you're using the Gann swing indicator. I like to use a 2-day swing. You can throw the 1 day on there and see if there's anything different. I don't think there is in this case. They're basically going to line up, but you could. We had the previous swing low here about 4,200, and so you could potentially move that up to 4,400, and capture an extra 400 or $200 worth of price movement there. And of course, you could also just trail the previous candle if you wanted to do that, and then you'd get an extra $300 profit. And you don't have to take everything out at once, of course. It's a common practice to just, have potentially 3 or 4 tranches of price action. So you might want to trail 20%, 50% of your price or of your equity in this particular trade below the previous candle, since price has been moving up quite strongly. And then that way you're not giving back too much as we kind of continue these crazy parabolic moves. So let's go ahead and take a look at silver real quick. Silver gapped up again. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. And so looking red here, this is going to look potentially like kind of a doji indecision candle here if it were to close like this. We're early in the morning, so I would not be banking on that, but these candles don't tend to be very large, and I wonder if I were to look at I think the one that people tend to look at is the I don't remember what the symbol is, AUX or something like that. So the COMEX silver index, I wonder if that one might look a little bit different. So I might take a look at that off camera just to see what that looks like. But this is the one that I've been utilizing and tracking. And so either way, price is up $83. Candles aren't really that big, but you could give up quite a lot depending on when you get on your trade, and you're giving up $13 worth of points here. So if you want to move your stop losses up to just like the very basic 2-day swing low, but as I mentioned before, as crazy as this has gone, it might be worthwhile just kind of trailing those previous candles with some of your account at least. So that's it for those. I was considering going into some of the other just like random stuff, but just as a kind of fire round thing, I don't think I'm going to do too much of that. But let's take a look at some of the basic stuff here. So this is kind of a hodgepodge, which isn't usually what I do, but whatever. We all do different things at certain times, and I tend to review these anyways. So this looks kind of like a channel like we have a triangle here, and this just looks like a symmetrical triangle to me. So it would be nice if we had flatter tops here. I would really like the look of that in terms of an ascending triangle. But yeah, potential triangle here, still setting below the 200 EMA, 200 SMA is still sloped up. So we do have about 50% bullishness here versus 50% bearishness on this, with the EMA, the 200 EMA being below the 200 SMA, and then also because this is sloped up, it's green, and because we have the 821s crossed over, that's green. So you got kind of 50-50 here about direction. We got the swing indicator trend is up. So we've already touched the 200. So if this came down and were to touch your 200 and that were it, that would be just kind of indication that price is going to continue dumping. But because, as I've mentioned many times before, this is a trend following system. When you're not in a very trendy market, you can just get chopped up. And if you look at the way that this market's kind of played out really, I mean, kind of there was some dumps here, but I'm just going to call it about here since 2022. Really, the market hasn't really been doing much for Ethereum. You did have some upside for sure. These are big ranges, right? So I probably would chop it off somewhere there. But yeah, I mean, this has just been like super chop, right? So we'll see which way Ethereum is going to break. Looking at the oscillators, it looks like there's potential for some upside here on the oscillators, kind of the same play on the MACD here, but you do have these hidden bearish signals that could potentially play out as well. But if Bitcoin's going to move, then I would expect this to stay flat or move as well. And then the last thing that I'm going to just take a real quick peek at is going to be Solana as one of the other larger assets. So curving up on the stochastic, looks like the MACD's poised to move up. On this one, we have basically macro trend looks bearish, but the smaller trend or the faster trend is looking, did I say bullish? Is looking bearish. And then on the faster trend is looking bullish. So probably good in this case for a touch of, it looks like this probably just switched here because we had down, up. And so the trend on the Gann swing really just changed, should have changed yesterday. And as it stands, this is just an inside bar. But this is looking fairly good for if we can get a breakout above these prices here. Obviously, there's some, you can see there's some resistance here. If we can get a break above this resistance here and a little bit of continuation so we can get outside of this range, which hasn't really been too long since middle of November. But if we can get outside of this range, then I think similar to Bitcoin, we're going to get a good high probability trade up to at least the 200s, one or both of these. Looks like based on how price is trending, this is going to continue repainting. So the 200 SMA may turn green, but you know, that's moving slowly. So really, I'm just looking at the shorter or the faster trends here. So we will go ahead and call it there in terms of the quick analysis. I've been working on some different stuff on the side I mentioned. So one thing that I want to do, I have my own trade journal. I'm thinking about just making that trade journal, and you can use it just as like trading discretionarily. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments below. It wouldn't be something, because there will be a small cost associated to that. I'd probably charge $5 or something a month. It really wouldn't be that much, but mostly just enough to cover the cost of like exposing the APIs to everybody else. For myself, it's enough that I can just use it for free. But if I was going to actually make this a true product and let other people use it, then of course I would expect that there's going to be a lot more use on the API, and so that it's not getting rate limited to the point where it's just not usable for anybody, including myself, then there would need to be a little bit of a fee associated with that so that I could support paying for the API costs. The other thing that I've been working on is just related to me producing this content, and so that's basically like a YouTube analytic, like thumbnail generator. You probably see a lot of those out there. This one is so you'll see a lot of them that use AI. The one that I've created also uses AI. So that's something else I might put out that for anybody who's actually just trying to create content. And so it will give you title, it will give you some titles, it will give you some descriptions. So that stuff's kind of just easy to run through. And then also a YouTube thumbnail and using some different image models. Right now, it's using the Nano Banana or Nano Banana Pro, which tends to be the best model. I like the way that those images come out. One thing, and then of course, if I did put that out, there would be a small charge with that just because the APIs for running all the AI stuff does cost a little bit of money. That it would be much cheaper than the ones that I've seen. There was one Pixels that I was using that seemed pretty cool. The downside to that was it was like $40 a month. And for like a professional team or somebody putting out, tons of videos every month and likely every week, it probably makes sense because then you're creating a whole bunch of content and you need to create those videos. But even for myself, producing, 3 videos a week ish, I didn't even burn through all the tokens, and so the $40 a month was just like way too much. Even though it's only $40, it was just like way too much for what I was actually getting out of it. Because I had already started to build this tool, and then I was just like saw this Pixels one, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I want to try it. And so the other thing that I've included in this is some feedback in terms of how we would how the model would be, the thumbnail would be expected to perform. And so if you get some feedback that it's missing some things that YouTube generally expects for content to perform well, you could just regenerate the image. And so that way, when you're putting out images, you would have an idea of if, at least some idea, if you expect it to perform well. And so that's something that I've read, is that a lot of people tend to struggle with creating good thumbnails that will perform well, and a lot of times it takes a little bit of experience. So this is intended to help bridge that gap a little bit. Of course, as with any product that I've ever put out, if it's something that people get interested in and start paying for, and then they want more features, I would include more features. Right now it just generates one image, but you can just generate multiple images. And then one thing I like to do is run A/B tests with those thumbnails. And so if you want to create different thumbnails to do A/B tests, that would be very easy to do. Something I'm considering doing. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that just for myself, because I tend to use that a lot, as I might just have some input that says create like 3 variations right out of the gate. And then that way I don't have to just, it's not that much work, but click the button 3 times, right? Instead of clicking the button 3 times, I could just automatically get 3 images to use right out of the gate. If that's something anybody out there is interested in and they might like to use, it seems like those tools tend to get a lot of popularity. And of course, I'm always looking for opportunities to do things that I enjoy, which usually revolve around code, get to learn new things around like AI development. And then also the primary goal of all that, besides learning myself, is to be able to provide value for other people and for myself. And so if anybody thinks that would be, is that something they're interested in, hit me up in the comments, and I'd be interested to chat about that and see what other features people might like. So, going to leave it there for now, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace, quants.